Good morning, lovely people. It's Nicola back, stitches and slapdashery on the deck because it's such a lovely Sunday morning. You'll probably notice I've got a little bit of cold symptom type sound still because it's been a really crappy health week, I have to say. Last Sunday, we had a lovely morning. We went out to the farmer's market. We had a walk. I even went in the lake and oh my God, it was freezing. It was so cold, it took my breath away, but it felt really good to go in. But I could feel that I was coming down with something. Mr. Stitches had already been suffering from something for about 3 days at that point. So I knew there was going to be something in the air. Well, let's just say Monday and Tuesday were an absolute wipeout because I had to call in sick on Monday. I had to sleep for almost constantly for 2 days. I assume it was a flu. I did not test for COVID, but I think it was some flu virus anyway. And yeah, Wednesday I was able to function a tiny bit better. I actually got dressed and did a bit of tidying about, and I managed to crawl into work on Thursday. I was supposed to have Friday off, but because where I work, this virus had obviously swept through quite a few of the staff, I was asked to go in on Friday for an extra shift. So I crawled in again on Friday. Yeah, I wasn't the only one. So Mr. Stitches and I are still coughing. Over a week later, we're still coughing and just praying for this to be over. It's not been fun. And reason why it's not been fun. First reason, obviously, it's never fun being sick. Reason 2, I had no urge to create anything at all. Reason 3, I started tasting bananas as if they were chemical-laden bubble gum. It was so weird. Like, bananas are one of my favorite foods. I often say if bananas didn't exist, I'd be so sad because I eat them every day. And they just tasted so disgusting. Of course, I had just bought about 3 bunches of them the day before this thing hit. So what I ended up doing is putting them in the freezer until things get back to normal. I did eventually manage to pick up some knitting. So the yarn I've been talking about in my previous vlogs, I picked up the Yarnsmiths Create Super Chunky in the deep ocean, and I am making a swatch cap. So it's just 45 stitches around. This is the beauty of using 10mm needles and a chunky yarn. So I got to the point where I wanted to crease for the crown, and I thought maybe I would manage to knit on this crown while I am talking to you. Hopefully I will manage it. Multitasking may still be out of my comfort zone. We'll see. In case you don't know what a swatch cap is, Elizabeth Zimmerman, that great guru of knitting who is no longer with us, she invented the term, and it's a great way to make sure you've got the gauge you want for a sweater, because a hat is like half of the body of the sweater. And it's in the round. If you're going to do your sweater in the round, you should gauge swatch in the round. And it's easy to measure. And so I ended up getting 11 stitches to 4 inches or 10 centimeters on here, which is good. I mean, I wasn't aiming for a specific gauge because I am just using one of the instructions from Anne Budd's handy book of top-down sweater patterns. But of course, she gives a whole range of gauges and then gives you all the figures for them. And the smallest, or I guess it would be the largest gauge she has on her sweater book here is 3 stitches to the inch. And of course I'm getting 2.75. So I needed to do a little bit of math. And I definitely can't knit while I'm thinking about other things. So let's just put this down for a minute. So what I did is I looked at all of the instructions for the sweaters in the book, and it's top-down raglan. So once you get past the division for the sleeves, then you can look at the book and see what she's using for the body. And I know that I want a certain amount of stitches at my gauge for the body around the torso. And then I just go look at the numbers she's given. So I am going to be following the 3-stitch gauge, but the size 40, and that should end up with a 44-inch circumference. The nice thing about working top down is you can try on as you go, and you can recalibrate if you need to. I do love the stitches on this. It's got a bit of texture. This yarn, it's very soft. And of course it works up fast. So I think that's going to be fun to use. Of course, there are 5 of us living here, and one son also got the same allergy as we have. Poor him. It's his birthday today. He's my baby, and he's 27 today. And I have to confess, but not within his hearing, that I completely forgot that it was his birthday today. It's been a week. So yesterday he was talking about what was for dinner today, and he wants to make an apple crumble, and he wants this for dinner, and he even went shopping for groceries in the evening, and it still didn't click because I hardly ever know what date it is. But my husband said to me this morning, so are we needing to get anything special in for his birthday today? And I'm like, I think he might have already got that covered. I went and looked in the freezer. He's bought ice cream for his own birthday. I feel so bad. Oh, man. So he and his oldest brother are going to be going out of town this week. They're working in the Kootenays, which is a mountainous area between the Okanagan and the BC-Alberta border. Beautiful area. They're working there all week. So I'm hoping that they're both going to be feeling healthy enough and not still fighting any nasty germs. Well, one of the things I did manage to do was read. It was so hard to focus. I couldn't do my word games for a few days. And yeah, I just had no urge to do anything except sleep or feel sorry for myself for a while. But I did manage to finish these 2 books. This one's called The Leap Year Gene, and it's by Shelley Wood. And I haven't read a book with this sort of plot before, but basically the main character here, she is born rather special in that she was born on February the 29th. And that means, of course, you know how people joke that people born on February 29th only have one birthday every 4 years. Well, she only ages 1 year for every 4. And as you can imagine, this can cause an awful lot of problems. Her parents and later herself try and keep it as low-key as possible. because they did not want to be singled out for attention, especially as living in Canada back in the early 20th century. In the early 20th century, there was quite a movement about eugenics and fitness parenting and perfect children. And of course, the same in Germany. And at some point, her parents take her to Germany along with her sister because her dad is in like the diplomatic service. So they have to be so careful, and they keep adjusting her ID so that it doesn't look like she is, say, 30 when she's actually 130. That was yeah. So when she was a child, she maybe looked like she was 5, but she was actually 20. The timeline can get really confusing, but it was a really good read, and it was a really good snapshot of different times in the last 100 years in different countries where she was. So I definitely recommend that one. It was a really good read. And then the other one is A Cold White Sun. And this is by Vicky Delaney. Oh, and I forgot to say, Canadian author. And Vicky Delaney, also Canadian. This book is set in a small town in British Columbia. Again, over in the Kootenays. Oh, coincidentally. It mentions places I know, like Castlegar and, I don't know, where else was it? Yeah, and Victoria, obviously, and places like that. And this is a detective novel, kind of. There must be a few books in this series. This Molly Smith character has obviously been in a few of her books now. And she's a police officer in this small town called Trafalgar, which I'm assuming the name is made up. I don't think there is an actual town called Trafalgar in the Kootenay area. And it's a murder mystery type thing. But yeah, a good read, and especially interesting to someone who lives in the province and loves to see all the local references. So 2 Canadian novels this week. And this one was even a large print, which was so relaxing to read, especially on a week when my brain was very overheated, you could say. I'm going to try with the knitting again. So let me see. I can't remember which day it was when I finally decided I was healthy enough for a walk. Maybe that was Friday. Oh yeah, Friday. That was so funny. We were all making pizza for dinner, and Mr. Stitchy said, "Oh, I think I'm going to go for a walk before dinner, get my steps in." And I said, "Oh, I was going to come for a walk with you tonight." But then he said he still needed his full 6,000, and I looked at mine, and I had already done like 4,500 at work. And I said, "Okay, you want to go walk faster and further than I do, so why don't you go out now, and I'll go for a little trot later on." So after dinner, I go out in my lovely summer skirt, t-shirt, and as soon as I left the house, there was a clap of thunder. And I thought, where did that come from? So I looked up there, and the sky was lovely. I mean, it was beautiful. There was all sorts of dramatic stuff happening in the sky, with the sun coming through places and the clouds coming over and the showers coming over. I thought, I'll keep going. Well, I got drenched, didn't I? I kept it fairly short because I didn't need a huge amount of steps for the rest of the day, but I still got drenched. I walked up the stairs and just took one look at Mr. Stitches, and with a hangdog look on my face, and this drenched, sort of drippy look to me, and he just laughed. On Saturday, we got out for a walk as well. But yeah, it was hot. By the time we started walking, it was already lunchtime, and that was probably a bad idea. We went to the nut farm, which was beautifully shady. I've got some footage of that I'm going to put in here. And it's lovely walking through there with all the big trees that have been there for so long. Then, of course, we headed out from there and went along on the road where there was not so much shade. And yeah, I flagged quickly. I really did. So I was glad when that was over. I think what I'm going to do with this swatch cap is I may not weave in my ends. I think what I'm going to do, why have my stitch markers, I couldn't put my stitch markers around the needles because the needles are too chunky. So I put them in the stitch, and the stitch markers are pushing through to the back instead of sitting on the front, which is very annoying. So of course I'm coming up to them to do my decreasing and not finding them. What was I saying? I've completely lost track of what I was saying now. So seeing as I've completely lost the thread of what I was saying, we're going to go talk about what's coming up next. I did get a little bit of footage from last Sunday's outing and also from yesterday's walk. And I got a lot of footage from this thing I was making yesterday. You know, when I'm lying there feeling like death warmed over all week, I'm like, I'm not going to have anything to talk about on the vlog this week. I've not made anything. So when I finally got some energy back, I thought, okay, I'd like to make something. And I was inspired by some scraps of quilt cotton that I had put aside when I was going through my scrap bag over a week ago. And so I've got quite a bit of footage of what I was doing with that yesterday. It's going to be a lot of editing down, I think, because I don't want this to get to be like a 2-hour video. And I'm not sure if I'm going to get that finished today. It's looking really fun at this point, but I'm not sure if I want to just hurry to get it finished or if I want to add extra fun bits to it before I call it done. So all will become clear once you watch that segment about the thing I am making. And for now, I am going to put this knitting down, I think, because I really am having a hard time knitting and talking at the same time. And I will get back to you a little bit later on. Today I'm testing out my overhead ring light camera arm for the first time. Very exciting. And I'm going to be playing with these cartoony prints. Now these are left over from a big piece of fabric that I bought from Fabricland ages ago. And if I remember right, I made a friend of mine an apron out of most of it. And these are just the offcuts. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of the full cartoon strip panels available, but I can still probably fussy cut a little bit of the fun stuff out. This is kind of falling off the edge of the fabric, but sob, how was I supposed to know to cut it on the bias? I think I can save that, probably. And then, actually, there's a better piece of it right there, which is not cut off, so I'll probably use that one. This lady here, I can probably use her on her own without her speech bubble. I think this originally said, sewing helps me to forget everything. This piece was, oh no, I've ripped it. And she's thrown herself on her bed. And now this one's sitting on a couch, crying her eyes out about something to do with sewing. And then this long piece here, I've got, why does everything happen to me? And then Modern Home Sewing Woes, a nice usable piece right there. I can't bear to leave these bolts behind. Am I a fabric addict? And this one is, it's ruined. You really do need a Microtex needle to sew knit. Actually, I disagree with that one. You actually need a jersey needle or a ballpoint to sew knit. But it's amusing anyway. So I think I can probably use some bits of this to make a really fun basket. I decided to grab one of the pairs of jeans that I recently got from my friend because there was lots of nice usable denim in the legs there. So I cut 5 squares that were 9 inches and I interfaced them all with this heavyweight, non-woven fusible. It's quite stiff, but I want this basket to have a little bit of rigidity and be able to support itself. And I can see that this is not fused properly already, so let's just get that iron back on there so I can steam it into submission here. So yes, 5 pieces. I did include some of the seam here because otherwise I wouldn't have got a big enough piece out of there. Oh, look at that. Look at that. I don't know what it is about fusible interfacing, but sometimes I feel like it just doesn't stick like it's supposed to. So 2 of my pieces have seam, 2 are plain, and 1 just has a very tiny bit of seam there that's just going to disappear into a seam and won't even get seen at all. So I want to snip bits of this, apply it to here. I'll probably use the Wonder Web, this Pellon Wonder Web. Once I decide what size to cut these, I'll cut this the same size, iron it to fuse it, and then do some stitching over it. And hopefully any stitching or whatever that I do on here, it shouldn't make it shrink because it'll be stabilized. So that's the plan with those. I've got some of my, well, I've got my whole bag of 2-inch scraps here, which I have pre-cut in the past. And I was thinking that when I originally envisioned this, I thought maybe I would use bits of the cartoon fabric and then sprinkle some other colored scraps with it. I don't know if that's going to happen because it depends if I actually like the look of it when I get started. I used my seam ripper to take one of the pockets off the back, which means I did lose all the stitching on here, but that's okay because I can add some stitching of my own, maybe in something a little bit brighter. Maybe one of the colours matches with these fabric scraps. Oh, words, Nicola. This was a fun pocket because it's got the heart-shaped little ribbit here. I really liked that. And I just cut with my pinking shears around it so that I can just sew it on and keep the whole thing intact without hitting the metal. And then these two pieces are waistband, which will hopefully become handles. At first, when I started sketching this out, I thought maybe it would be a tote bag. Then I thought maybe it could be a Japanese rice bag. And then I thought, well, I don't really want it to have drawstrings on the top. So I think it's going to be the shape of a Japanese rice bag made with the 5 squares. And then I'll just put handles on each side. So here's the plan for the next stage. I want to add some stitching to each of these panels. And what I thought I would do is I would pick something decorative off my sample fabric there, or my card that came with my machine. And I'm using a pink thread that's pretty close to this pink. And I'm going to just do some, I think, hatching with this one. I probably won't go straight across her face with it. I might avoid that part. So I'll do that with one stitch, and then I'll use probably a different stitch for each square. I'm hoping this is going to work out. I've cut this really boring grey fabric for the lining, and still planning on using this pocket, but inside I'm not sure about the small one. The small one probably is not going to make it into this project after all. So I have my walking foot on, which should work perfectly for this. I put a 90 needle in there because of the thickness of the denim and the interfacing. So I think I'm just going to do my first line down here. And you know what I could do is I've got a spacer. I've got a guide for this. If I really wanted to be just a little bit more, what's the word? Less slapdash. There we go. If I was less slapdash about this today, I could pop that guide in there. And use that to make sure my lines are parallel. And I want to put my pocket onto one of my linings. So hang on a minute, I need to figure out whether I'm doing horizontal zigzags or vertical zigzags. Horizontal, I think. So as with a lot of my projects, I haven't thought it all out ahead of time. I had this idea. I scribbled it down on a pad of paper, and it's changed a few times since then. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? Okay, now let's go back to really basic straight stitch for a minute. I was looking at this orange stitching and thinking, I'm about to do some pink stitching on here. And wouldn't it look a bit odd if I have pink stitching here and orange stitching here? So I think I'm going to unpick these lines, re-sew them in pink, and then I'll attach it to the fabric. I think I'm ready for my assembly now. The prep always takes longer than the assembly, I find. At least it feels like it does. So what I'm going to have to remember when I put my uprights together, if you imagine I'm making a cube without a lid, and I'm going to join my uprights, my walls, together first. But I have to make sure not to sew all the way to the very bottom of the box, because I need to put my base in afterwards, and there'll be a little bit of fiddling with that. So it's been a while since I made one of these. Let's see how it goes. So here's the challenging part. Everything so far has been relatively easy. However, now we have to put a base inside the cube. So I've clipped it in, made sure that I've got all my walls the right way up. And at first you think, oh, there's no way it's going to work. But actually, as you get each side clipped in, it starts to look like it's going to make sense. The challenge is obviously the corners. Now, I think what I need to do is sew each side without continuing on around, I think. I can't remember how I did this before. I think what I may have to do is look where my stitching ended on my verticals. Easier on the pink. So my stitching finished here, and it needs to start here and then go across here and finish over here where the other stitching finished. I think that's how it works. As I said, I haven't done this for a while, and I'm hoping it's going to work out. It's more fiddly than usual because this is so stiff. If it was just my lining, and you know what? Here's an idea. I think I'm going to do the lining first, because that should be soft and simpler and more manipulable. So I think that's what I'm going to do. All right, here's my cube, and I've pinned my lining because I'm going to practice on this before I do the outer. So here's my base right on the bottom. So if the base is sitting flat on the bed of my machine and the wall is just lying on top, I should be able to carefully start sewing from where this seam ended to where that seam ends. And I don't go into the seam allowance. So I start on my friction pen line there, just next to that stitching. Fingers crossed this is going to work out. I'm going to do a little bit of a forward and back thing. It's a little lumpy there. I think it's working out. We'll see. Okay, let's go. Oh, it hitched on something there. I'm not sure what and why. Ah, okay. It was catching on a pin. It's probably fine. Now, one of the 4 seams of the base, I am going to leave a gap in for turning later. I'm not sure if it's necessary for me to move my second side out of the way here, but let's do it anyway. So I've got this flat, this is flat, and this guy out of the way. And the pin out of the way so I don't get caught up on that again. So I think I did it right. Get rid of that. I think I did it right. If you turn it right side out and then you push your corners out, there shouldn't be any gaps here. I mean, they don't have to be perfect because this lining is going to be pushed in on itself and sitting inside the basket ultimately. But I think I'm happy with that. I've left this turning gap in the lining so that when I put the 2 of them together, I can berth the bag or basket. My seam allowances are not sewn into at all for the base. And there's a little bit of overshoot there. But yep, I'm happy with that. I've wrangled it under the needle. Oh, we're shaking around a bit here. I've wrangled it under the needle. I pushed that back wall in, tried to squish this side wall down, and obviously the bottom base is flat there, and I've taken my table off to give the whole piece some room to move. So I put my needle down into the place where the vertical seam finished. And we're going to see how it goes. Now it's hard for me to see my stitching just here. Okay, because it was so hard to see the light thread of that seam, I've used my friction pen just to mark where I want to stop stitching. This is pushed in. That should be fine as long as I don't sew too far. There's one done. Here's the routine I got to. I'm on the last side now. So push in, push in. In other words, that back wall that's furthest away from me, push in, push down so that everything's flattened for the seaming. Wrestle the thing under the needle, quickly get my needle into that point. And my phone is about to run out of charge. So here's the current state of affairs. My lining is completely ready. I have pressed my seam allowances open, including around this gap here, which looks very inadequate to get this massively stiff piece through, but if I have to unpick to make the gap bigger, that's always an option. So that's good to go. This is finished. I am not going to add any more embellishment. I'm happy with the way it is. And I have also pressed my seam allowances open, just the verticals. I didn't try and battle my way all the way to the bottom of the box to get the iron in there or to turn it back the other way around again, because it was hard enough to get it right side out anyway. So we mustn't forget handles. So I'm going to base them on at opposite sides, and then I can put the two parts together. Handles are basted on, I just found the center and measured 1 inch either side, lined that up like that. Made sure that my waistband pieces were the same on both sides. And now, to put this inside here. I'm hoping it's gonna work. I put you back overhead because otherwise I'm trying to reach around the ring light to try and do the clipping, which is just a little bit too challenging. I actually sewed around twice. The first time I sewed from the interfaced side because I thought that the lining, being so thin and uninterfaced, would probably stretch or cause a problem. And then it was a little uneven, and I thought I'm going to do another line of stitching just to smooth out where the machine had to struggle over the lumpy bits, and I did it from the other side. So I've done 2 rows of stitching, and I'm hoping that by the time I've turned that out, it will look good. Now it's time to give it a whole bunch of crumpling to get it through this hole. I did attempt to iron this to the inside, but it's a bit of a struggle. So what I'm going to do is clip it down, get it top stitched, and then sew up my gap. And here we are, almost at the end of vlog 101. Phew! This basket was quite the marathon. I spent probably 2 hours on it yesterday and probably another 2 hours on it today, maybe. Not sure. But it's done and I'm really pleased with it. So I have designated, this is my front. No, I haven't. No, it's not. So I've designated this is the front. And then my handles are on sides there. And we've got her. And we've got her. And we've got her. Just a plain bum. And yeah, a fairly plain inside too. And I was pleased with how my machine got through all of those layers of denim and interfacing. So it sewed through everything and I did not break any needles. So that was awesome. And I didn't have to unpick any top stitching. Very, very grateful for that. So all of that was just inspired by that cartoon fabric. Very low cost project. The jeans came for free. The fabric scraps were from another project. The interfacing I've had in the stash for a really long time, and it's not the expensive kind. It was just a non-woven, so not expensive at all. And then the only other materials I used in that would have been the thread. Yeah. I think this will make a very fun container for something or somebody. I'm still not sure who or when or what, but I just wanted to make it and have fun with it. And the best thing about working on this weekend has been that I've been able to forget being sick while I've been working on it. So that was nice to actually have something that I was able to concentrate on and absorb myself in and stop thinking about my stupid flu. Wow, I think we got to the end now. The end. We popped out today to the garden centre. It's closing in about another week probably, so they have a 2-for-1 sale, and I spent $36 on rather a lot of beautiful flowers. And I'm going to spend some time this evening potting them up and putting them on my deck where I can admire them every day. So that makes me happy. Thanks very much for coming along for the ride today. Hope you enjoyed it. Do love to see your comments. If you are able to leave a comment, that would be wonderful. And I will see you again soon with something else that's fun. Bye for now.